Hello and welcome to another episode of Behind the Headlines of History, the podcast that sees us diving in to newspapers.com and pulling out some intriguing, fascinating and entertaining stories. I'm Brad Argent and I love stories and I love history.
And I'm Brad's co-host, Dr. Michala Hulme, historian and genealogist.
And we put our genealogy hats on.
Mostly it's just me.
Well, yes, though I kind of pull off a hat slightly better than you. But anyway,
He tries.
I digress. We put on whatever headgear we feel we need to and dive into the genealogical records associated with some of these stories that we pull out of the newspapers.
So join us as we go behind the headlines of history.
And this week, with Thanksgiving just around the corner, we thought we'd focus on some interesting stories that have got to do with being thankful. Now, whether you celebrate Thanksgiving or not, it is a good time of year to be reflecting on the things that you're thankful for. So, other than me, what are you thankful for?
Okay, so I'm thankful for, obviously my family. I'm thankful for fibre broadband, because do you remember dial-up where you couldn't use the phones? I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for my dog. That's the biggest thing. I'm so thankful for my dog, Henry, because every single day he makes me laugh. He's the naughtiest dog in the world, but I just absolutely adore my dog, Henry.
Oh, we don't deserve dogs. They are awesome. But it's funny that you bring up dogs because my story is about a dog and about a boy who's very thankful for the existence of this particular dog. So my front page story is all about a Saint Bernard. Now, you know what a Saint Bernard is.
I love those dogs. You know, they grow massive.
Oh, yeah. And they rescue people, right? One thing I didn't know about Saint Bernards is they kind of came into existence in the Victorian era. They were bred, the modern day Saint Bernard, as we see them, was bred in the Victorian era. They weren't a dog that's kind of existed forever. They were bred from some other dogs, but they've seemed to have just taken this place as the rescuing kind. And that's what my story is about. It's about a dog rescuing a boy, which is just a beautiful story. So it comes from Springfield, Massachusetts, and it's the Springfield Evening News. It's Monday, July 17th, 1911. It's page 2. And it's Big Dog Saves Boy Sinking in River. Now, the story does pretty much exactly what the headline says.
Exactly what it says on the tin.
And so I kind of, who is this? What's the story? I wanted to find out what's the story. And I wanted to, just check that all the facts lined up. So the boy in question was a guy called Daniel Feder. And I wanted to check, found him in the 1910 census in the US. So I went, Now, Daniel must have had a great life because his father ran a candy store.
Wow.
Like, talk about kid in a candy store. He was literally the kid in the candy store. But he had a habit, dear young Daniel. He was a somnambulist.
A what?
Sleepwalker.
Oh.
So he went sleepwalking one morning. He went on this 5-minute walk until he wasn't walking anymore. He needed to swim. He fell into the river.
No.
So he was saved by a dog, a Saint Bernard, but not just any Saint Bernard, and not just the dog. So there was a night watchman, and the night watchman, his name was Jerome Guerin. Now, he's got form. He actually saved somebody else from that river in 1903. So he's done this before. And there's also a belief that the dog has done this before as well. But the dog jumps in, grabs the boy, starts pulling him back to the shore. And Jerome sees the dog struggling. He goes in, helps the boy and the dog get out. But this was no ordinary Saint Bernard. Now, you were saying Saint Bernards are huge, right?
Yeah.
The average male Saint Bernard is about maybe 180 to 240 pounds.
Okay.
Which in, metric is what? 64 to 82 kilos.
Okay.
Well, that's a big dog.
Mhm.
Not this dog. This dog, Corbett, is the dog's name. He's listed as being 280 pounds.
Wow.
That's 127 kilos. That's a big dog.
That is a big dog.
Now, the largest ever recorded is 156. So it's within the realms of what we know, but it's definitely a big dog. And the dog became something of a celebrity for saving Daniel, right? And that's where the story popped up that he had saved him before. And, you know, he would go around town and everybody would pet the dog and everybody would give the dog treats. And Daniel, of course, owes his life to this dog. I do have an extract from the article I'd like to read.
Okay.
New York, July 17. Morris Vedder, who keeps a candy store in 312 Cherry Street, awoke in his apartment over the shop at 4 o'clock yesterday morning and heard a great deal of barking and cheering outside his window. He jumped up and went downstairs to find his son Daniel, 12 years old, in the arms of Jerome Guerin, a watchman living in 324 Cherry Street, and to see Corbett, a 280-pound Newfoundland dog, turns out he was actually a Saint Bernard, bouncing around them in great excitement. All three were soaking wet. The elder Vedder feared there had been trouble. "I fell into the river, father," the boy explained, "when I was walking in my sleep, and Corbett here jumped in after me, and Guerin, he saved both of us." And I kind of went, what was Daniel's story? What happened to Daniel next? And because he'd been pulled from the river, he went on to live quite a full life. In 1914, he entered the media. He was an office boy for the Jewish Daily Forward, which was a newspaper. And when he died in 1956, he was actually the editorial secretary. So he had quite the rise through it. You can see him in both the World War I and World War II draft cards. And this is what we know about him, because we know the draft cards can give you a little bit of physical information.
Yeah.
So, who was Daniel? He was 5'7". He was 185 pounds. Even as a grown man, he wasn't as heavy as the dog. So just give you some sense of the size of this dog.
Oh my days.
He's got brown eyes and hair with a dark complexion. He was of Russian Jewish extraction. He married in December of 1921, and they had a son, Jesse. And Jesse was apparently very good at tennis. I found a picture.
I thought you were going to say swimming.
I
then.
did find a picture of Jesse, his son. I wasn't able to find a picture of Daniel. But the earliest newspaper account I could find of a dog rescuing someone, so I went back and I had a look. How far back did it go? It was the 11th of December in 1815 in the Yorkshire General Advertiser. But I'm sure dogs have been pulling humans out of rivers since they were domesticated. I mean, what a wonderful story. I don't have a dog in my life at the moment. And it is something that's been bothering me.
I think the problem is you travel a lot, don't you? So it's quite hard, isn't it, for you to get a dog because you're always all over the show.
You know, and I've searched the newspapers quite a bit, and I have not found any stories of cats pulling people out of the river.
No, they're probably the ones pushing you in. They're literally shoving you in.
Oh, I do love cats, but for very different reasons.
Yeah.
But dogs are there for you.
Oh, I worship my dog.
So I'm very thankful for the dogs that have been in my life. And I'm sure Daniel was very thankful for his.
So, are you ready then for my story?
Absolutely.
So, my front page story this week follows on with the animal theme. Okay. So, it's titled The Moon Hoax, and it's from the Daily Evening Express, which is in Pennsylvania. And the date is the 20th of February, 1871. And this story is actually talking about the death of a journalist called Richard Adams Locke. Now, I came across this story because I was doing research and I was looking at, I was thinking about fake news, right? You know, like, there's a lot of fake news, isn't there, at the minute? And that's like the buzzword, isn't it, with everything we watch now? Is it fake? Is it real? Anyway, in 1835, I want you to go back to that time. I don't want you to tell me what you were doing then. But in 1835, the Sun newspaper in New York sent readers into an absolute frenzy with the most astonishing claim. And they claimed that a gentleman, he was called Sir Joseph Herschel, and with his telescope, he was in South Africa, he was able to see what was on the moon. He was able to see the moon, but not just the moon, what life forms and vegetation was on the moon. He said that there were what he described as Batmen, not Batman, like as in Batman and Robin, but Batmen, so bats' arms, but with legs. He described crystal cities and lunar unicorns. So he could see all this from his telescope, and there was that much detail in this, Brad. There was actual sketches in the newspaper of what this guy could see through his telescope, and the public were lapping this up.
Didn't they do something similar with like the canals on Mars?
Oh, well, this went global. Like newspapers all over the shop were covering this. This was like, you know, such a big story. However, a few days after it had been posted, it turns out that it was a complete hoax. The whole story was made up. And it was made up by an upcoming journalist called Richard Adams Locke. And he was, at the time, the editor of The Sun was reporting on another case. It was a murder case. And Locke was there also reporting on it. And they just got chatting. And he said, you know, I'm an upstart reporter. I've come over from Britain with him. My family came over in 1832. I'll put a link to his family tree, by the way, in the comments on Ancestry if you want to see it. Came over in 1832. You know, this is my first big story. And it was that good, this article that he'd written on this supposed murder in the plains, that the editor of The Sun took him on as a journalist and said, go on. Now, the editor of The Sun claims that Locke did have a conversation with him, that he was going to make up this story. He said it was satire, but, you know, it's up to you whether you sort of believe that or not. And it only came out because Locke confided in one of his mates that it was just completely made up and none of it was true. And that's how it got outed as a hoax. And he literally, when I say it, he fooled the world with this. Career-wise, he never quite recovered. So, you know, he did write a few other things, but he never quite recovered. I mean, he's quite an interesting character to me, the journalist. And that's why when I was thinking about how I was going to tell you this story, I wanted to focus on the journalist because, I mean, he was born in Britain. He moved over to America with his family and his children in 1832. So that is some journey in itself, isn't it? In 1832, leaving where he was from in Britain to then going to settle in America. And then his first big case is the Plains murder in 1835. So imagine that, you know, going from like Somerset in the UK to like the Plains, sat there reporting on a murder trial, meeting the editor of the Sun newspaper from New York, you know, sending him your story, him thinking that's good enough, and then pitching him the idea for this moon hoax. He must have had something about him, you know, to be able to
It's a big punt to take, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm going to, if I had to guess, I would say there's probably some kind of collusion.
Yeah.
Where he's kind of said, I need something that's going to pull in people. Mm-hmm. It needs to be fabulous but believable.
Yeah.
You know, it's the kind of article you would see today, and you know it's satire, But you know that there is a segment of the population that doesn't see that as satire. Back then, even if it was satire, I don't think most people would have got that.
No.
And it kind of reminds me of the whole War of the Worlds hoax.
Yeah.
To some degree. You
Yeah.
know, it's just 100 years earlier. I've heard this story before. It's quite a famous story. Herschel was an astronomer.
He was, that's right. So he was, so that there was truth in it. So there was some truth as in that he did exist, and he was an astronomer, and he was a fantastic astronomer, but he hadn't invented a telescope that could see life on the moon, especially not this kind of life on the moon. But bearing in mind, there is arguments to say that at the time the newspaper was particularly struggling, and its circulation doubled when this story came out. So in effect, he kind of saved, there's an argument to say he saved the newspaper.
You wouldn't for 1 minute suggest that newspapers create stories in order to sell papers, would you?
Absolutely not, no. But the Moon Hoax has been labelled as the first great media stunt in American history. And it's that sort of combination, I suppose, of fiction, fake news, storytelling, science fiction.
Because, you know, the thing that was like, when you were explaining it to me, there were things in there that were like, okay, these are the building blocks of modern day fake news. Take things that are true.
That are semi-true.
Here's an astronomer
he exists.
known for telescope things. The moon is something we know, but we don't know much about it. So there are elements of fact within it, and it's just an elaborate fantasy created around a core of valid and, you know, objectively, identifiable information.
Honestly, even professional astronomers were confused. Yale turned up at the newspaper offices, and, you know, the editor sort of batted them away, you know, managed to sort of convince them, and then they left semi-convinced. The whole world was convinced that, honestly, the moon was full of unicorns, Batmen, lunar cities. Honestly, he'd convinced the world, and had he not, you know, confided in somebody, I don't think it would have been outed so quickly. Obviously, you know, it would have been outed, but maybe not as quickly as it was. So I suppose you are wondering what happened to him.
Yes.
Well, as I've mentioned, his career sort of never really recovered after that. He stayed in journalism, but he struggled with poor health and financial instability. He died in 1871 in Staten Island. But yeah, nobody will ever forget the great moon hoax of 1835.
That's great. I mean, it's, as legacies go, he probably would have preferred something else. But he's not going to be forgotten by history.
No.
And, you know, it's at that time period in our history where, you know, the general level of education of science was improving. It was a more rationalist time where science was starting to lead the way. And there was a desire, I think, for us to not want to be alone. And so, you know, sort of projecting this other people on this thing that we all know and that we all see, as fascinating as it would have been, it must have been somewhat reassuring to go, oh, there's people there, and I think to some degree that probably led to people seeing canals on the surface of Mars, and us as humans wanting to find some sense of connection in our cosmic neighborhood. Well, that's a fascinating story, and I am thankful that you shared it with me and reminded me of it, because I knew I'd heard it before. But of course, as always, when I spend time with you, I learn something else. But now it is time for extra, read all about it. What do you got for me, Michala?
Okay, so today I'm sticking with the animal theme. And my article is from the Atlanta Constitution, And the date is Monday, the 22nd of July, 1895, and it's on page 8. And the title is this: Was a Human Menagerie. Queer Death of Thomas Foote, an Animal Impersonator. You might be wondering where I'm going here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in July 1890, 22-year-old Thomas Foote from New York died under highly unusual circumstances, and they were very unusual, let me tell you. Known locally for his strange behaviour, Foote was said to be profoundly affected by the food he ate, mimicking the animals he had just consumed. So after eating beef, he would roam around on all fours, bellow like an ox and graze on grass. After mutton, he belated like a lamb. And then after chicken, he scratched the ground for worms and ate them with apparent satisfaction. On the day of his death, he'd been eating squirrel meat. Thomas climbed a tree and began jumping from limb to limb, barking and behaving like a squirrel. I'm not sure that squirrels bark. His father pleaded with him to come down, but Thomas refused and attempted to leap between trees. He missed his footing and fell and died within 5 minutes of the fall. Now that is a warning to anybody out there that, one, don't eat squirrel meat because it sounds a bit weird, but two, don't jump from tree to tree like a squirrel because it's not safe.
Geez, there are so many questions. So many. Did he actually exist? Or is
Yes.
this a piece of entertainment?
No, he definitely existed. Thomas Foote, Foote. The Human Menagerie.
I'd love to see the coroner's report.
What would you put on the death certificate?
I
suppose it'd be
death from
falling from a great height. While
associated with impersonating a squirrel.
Yeah,
I mean, who wouldn't want that on their death certificate?
I would.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I would. So
I would love my ancestors to find something like that. That made them go, oh. I want them to just like a little bit embarrassed and maybe 5% ashamed.
So, after eating beef, would you roam round on all fours, bellow like an ox, and graze on grass? He does that in his spare time, folks. So that's it for my story. But what have you got, Brad?
Well, it wouldn't be a Thanksgiving-themed podcast.
Yeah.
An animal Thanksgiving-themed podcast without mentioning one particular animal.
Oh.
And that would have to be...
A turkey?
Absolutely, a turkey. So I have a story from the newspaper. It's a Thanksgiving game. Now I'm going to just read it out because it's...
Now, before you carry on, is this a game our listeners and viewers can play along with at home?
Yeah. But, like, you know, if you want to play this at home, just wait until I've finished reading the story before you commit to doing that. So, this comes from the Coweta Times in Coweta, Oklahoma. It's Thursday, November 30, 1905. And it's titled A Thanksgiving Game. So this is a little bit of, fun you can get up to on Thanksgiving. A Thanksgiving game. One of the funniest of funny games peculiar to Thanksgiving time is called Hunt the Turkey. Go out to the kitchen and take the turkey out of the oven and bring it in and hide it somewhere in the parlor. Under the lace curtains in the windows is a good place for you, or you might shove it down inside the piano. Then the guests come in and hunt for it. The person who finds it must hit someone with it before the person can get it back to the other room, which is home base.
Hang on a minute. Sorry. So you've taken a hot turkey out of the oven.
Yep.
You're hiding it in the piano.
Yep.
And then you're hitting somebody with it.
Yeah, the person who finds it must hit someone with it before the person can get back to the other room, which is the home base. So if you find it, you've got to hit somebody with it. So we're already talking about assaulting somebody with a turkey that's just come out of the oven.
Burns. Keep going.
Yeah, but proceed with caution. It's not fair to throw the turkey, as it must be swung with the hands. So you can't throw it like a ball. You've got to swing it like a club, which is so much safer. If a person accidentally knocks over a lamp or breaks a pitcher or throws the turkey through the window, he or she must pay a forfeit. And rightly so. Of course, this game, which is funny and one in which both old and young may join, must not be played longer than half an hour before the time set for the dinner, for the turkey must be taken back to the oven and allowed to finish cooking before being carried to the table. So this is something that you do like at some point during the turkey cooking process. Like this is insane.
So everyone's put their hands on it. You've whacked it at people. You've hidden it in a piano, and then you're going to put it back in the oven, and then everyone's going to eat it.
It must be held in the hands right side up so that the stuffing will not fall out. Well, obviously. To appreciate this game, try it. You know what? I can appreciate this game without having to try it. I see. Now, I've got no other evidence that game ever existed.
Okay.
I'd like to think that somebody's got a few column inches to spare in the lead up to Thanksgiving and has just decided to make up this game. I'm not at all suggesting you should try this at home.
But I want to know. So Brad can't find any information to say that it existed, but does it exist? Is this a Thanksgiving game that you play that we don't know about? If so, put it in the comments. Or what other Thanksgiving games do you play that we don't know about, that may, gone through your family for generations? We want to hear from you, so pop it in the comments.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this is not a cultural thing for either of us. So maybe Thanksgiving is something that's very much part of your culture. And this is something that you do. I would be shocked and surprised if that was the case. But who knows? It's a wide, wide world out there.
I think I'm traumatized by that.
What about the turkey?
Anyway, on that note, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in, for listening to us, for watching us.
If you're watching this or listening to this in the lead up to Thanksgiving, why not pop over to the Ancestry.com website? There's always a bargain to be had. And if you want to find out anything about the stories that we've talked about on today's episode, they can be found in the comments section on the YouTube video, or they can be found in the show notes if you're listening to this on audio. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please like, subscribe, share, and reach out and say hi. If you want to catch us on our socials, Michala can be found
at Dr. Michala Hulme.
And I can be found at _Brad Argent. You can get newspapers.com at newspapers.com or Ancestry at Ancestry. And as always, thank you for your time. Behind the Headlines of History is a podcast from Ancestry and newspapers.com. All the newspaper articles are sourced from newspapers.com with additional research on Ancestry and using some other sources. We recorded here at the beautiful Outset Studios, and the producer is the delightful Bryonic Partridge. The executive producers are Myron Angus and Victoria Welch, and the editing is done by Matt Birtwell.